Hello and welcome to the podcast today. I'm Blake Johnson. Great to be with you as we talk about family legacy and financial legacy. So with me today, I've got Rachel. She's an entrepreneur, an interior designer, and real estate investor. And so we're happy to have her on the show. Rachel, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, why don't you start off by talking a little bit more about what you do and kind of your background and how you got here.
Yes, so I'm an entrepreneur. I've been, doing that for the last almost decade. But I actually got started in finance. I studied business in school, majored in finance, and really kicked off my career in corporate finance. And after I got married and started to build a family, I began to, explore a few more career paths, specifically in the realm of creativity, and just very organically got involved in the interior design space. And recently, in the last couple years, have kind of segued into real estate investing also. So kind of pairing my background in interior design, my background in business, and strategically applying both of them together to build wealth through real estate.
Awesome. There's going to be a lot of good questions I already can start to think of for this.
Good.
But before we get into the nuts and bolts, I always like to start off with something interesting about our guests, something that most people wouldn't know about you. Whether it's something you've done, something you were a part of, award, kind of anything in that realm.
Okay, most people wouldn't know. I used to have a secret government clearance for, classified work that I did. And I have 4 kids, and spicy food is probably my number one love language.
Okay. You gave us a couple there. Yeah, government clearance. Interesting. Was that for a finance job or?
It was, yes. I used to work in the defense industry as a financial analyst. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's definitely unique. I love it. So let's start with your background growing up. Is there a specific moment or story that you remember about, for good or for bad, that your parents that you had around, that your parents talked to you about money, or it was a bad experience with money? You saw them, the way they handled that, and how that shaped you and your desires to go into finance and learn those things.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up small family, just my parents, my brother, and I. But my dad was really a businessman as well and an entrepreneur. So when I was young, he went in that direction. My uncle and him, started their own business, and that led us to move at a pretty young age for me. And so I was sort of around that, and there's quite a few entrepreneurs on that side of the family, my grandmother even, and several successful cousins that I have today. But I would say being around that in my youth, the mindset, the way my father kind of thought and taught me to think, it just sort of positioned me. I've always kind of thought big in that realm of like, what the possibilities of what I could do. Probably pivotal moment, I would say, was watching, decisions being made regarding entrepreneurship that were probably rooted mostly in fear. So, did my dad have the opportunity to go all in? Maybe not. I don't know. Either way, I would say that was definitely a foundation of, how I think today and the risks that I take. And I definitely take a lot of risk.
Did your parents talk to you about money? Like, was it a discussion topic? Like, hey, we decided to go in business because we can do this and this, or, we like the flexibility of making our own money, or,
No.
here's.
There was never any in-depth conversation that I recall about that.
Okay. And that's the norm. That's one of the things I found interviewing people is, and there's a lot of statistics to back this up, that most families just don't talk about money. And so one of the things we're trying to do is change that that narrative and have those open discussions. So with that, what is it that you would like you said you have 4 kids. How are you
I do.
teaching them about money? How would you like your legacy to be around that?
So I have always included my children in my entrepreneur journey. That has been key for them, being able to be around me. That's one of the beauties of kind of creating your own schedule, is having the ability for my children to be present with mom still. And as they're growing and developing, really encouraging them to problem solve when it comes to, how to get money, or if they want, to buy something. And so we have conversations around that frequently. And I support and encourage their ideas, even if, obviously I might see further down the road, but just try to not kind of crush that dream early on. An example would be like, we have chickens, so we get fresh eggs. And so the other day they had this whole plan of how they were going to go sell eggs in the neighborhood, and just little things like that to help them understand, hey, I can actually creatively think of ways to make money. So they're still relatively young. We don't have, super deep conversations about that just yet, but
I've got a 13-year-old, so you're starting to have a little bit more of those in-depth conversations with them.
right.
Maybe how do those conversations go? You talk about creating value, and I think that's a huge part of it, is like, hey, you're being creative in how you make money, and it's really about, are you creating value for someone else? But what do you tell them after they make the money? What do they do with it?
Right now they're saving it. My oldest son has had his first little summer job, so he's made a pretty good amount of money for his age, and it's been burning a hole in his pocket for sure. But being able to walk him through strategy of, like, what do I want to buy? Why do I want to buy it? Doing our research, and, allowing him to process with a level of strategy before he just spends all his money. They definitely value and appreciate that money more. And we'll have frequent conversations if they're like, I want to buy, fill in the blank, whatever they might want to buy. And I'm like, okay, great. Well, you have money, right? And so getting them to think, if I want something, I have to be able to figure out how can I get it? It's really about that mindset and letting them grow into the realization of, like, there's no limitation on how much money you can create, really, right? It's like, I think that's really valuable, especially growing up, and maybe like cultural barriers that could present themselves through various streams of thinking like there's only one way to make money. I think honestly that's my generation. Like, we were raised to like get a good education, go to school, and like you're on this path of success. And a lot of times that's fantastic and it works long term. But then there's always those entrepreneurs who are like, but there's got to be more. Like there's more ways to, add value that actually can pay me for what I'm good at. So for my children specifically, teaching them to just get creative around how I can act. Like, I don't just have to ask mom and dad for money all the time.
Yeah, and the point of that, I think, is to make sure they understand, like, money isn't just nothing. Like, things cost time and energy is essentially
Right.
what they're learning by, yeah. So you want to buy this? Great. You have money, go do it. Oh,
Yeah.
well, then I maybe don't want that,
Yes.
and that's the biggest thing. And we talk a lot in this podcast about eliminating entitlement. That's one of our big themes. And so, I think that falls in line with there. Is there anything else you do with your kids that you think would help, that's going to help prevent them from growing up and being entitled?
Oh, we're big on work ethic and following through with commitments. So, of course, my husband is a huge part of that as well. But, you know, staying true to what we say we're going to do, even when we don't feel like it, pushing them, especially with our oldest, because he's on that cusp of like, mom and dad can't hold my hand forever, right? So I have to be able to make good choices. And, you know, if he doesn't feel good that day, or he feels a little like, oh, my head hurts, or, you know, and really getting him to think, okay, well, there's a difference between mediocre and greatness. And as life goes on, like you're going to have to do things that you don't always feel like doing. And being able to decipher, like, do I have enough in me to follow through with what I've committed to do and push through? Or do I really need to take a step back because I genuinely don't feel good? So just kind of working through some of those fine tune of like, we've made a commitment, we're going to follow through with what we do. And the work ethic, like you have to contribute around here, you know, specifically the home, and like help your parents. And we're big on that. So
Sounds like chores are a big part then.
yes, not just chores either, but like ownership, right? Like this is yours too. You want to enjoy, like the boys, we have 2 boys and 2 girls. So the boys are at the stage of really learning how to upkeep the yard and mow independently, and, you know, just the baby steps of maturing and having responsibility.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's interesting. I think even within my time of career, it went from the hustle and the grind, entrepreneur path of like work, 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 get it all done, da da da, and then it was like, well, we don't need to sacrifice everything to do that. And the pendulum has swung so far back that it's now, oh, just follow your passion, and if you don't enjoy it, you don't have to do it, and it's just easy. And it's no, there's things I don't want to do every day, but I have
Yes.
to do them. You know,
Right.
that you have to be able to get up, do those things that you don't want to do, eat that frog, as Brian Tracy's book says, and like get the stuff done to make it happen. And
Hmm.
so it's finding that middle balance, because I do think we can overcorrect and be workaholics and just do that.
Yes.
But we also don't want to be the soft, oh, if it doesn't feel good, then I don't have to do it. Well, that doesn't make sense either.
Exactly. Yeah.
So with being an entrepreneur, I'm assuming you have some employees. Is that true?
I don't right now. None that work
Oh, okay.
directly for me. I have over
Okay.
the years, but right now I subcontract out my work.
Okay. Well, so in your experience with employees, because I feel like that translates as well as we try to, we've helped kids, but I think part of our legacy is helping those, that we employ or that we're over, maybe the ones we mentor. Would any of that advice change? Like, what are the things you did with them to help them learn skills that would help them be not only more productive for you, but also for themselves, so they can grow in their own capacity?
I mean, definitely there's a parallel in the approach. Historically, I prefer to, provide the necessary instruction, but then allow for a level of, I don't want to say fear, but I'm not there to hold your hand all the time. So it's sort of, I need you to show me immediately that you have a level of independence and that you can, walk with the instruction given. Not that I'm not available if you have a question, but really pushing them oftentimes out of their comfort zone to actually achieve and do what I've hired you to do. So if that answers your question,
Yeah, no,
it
I think
typically
that's a
pushes people, you know.
yeah, I think that's very very correlative to our kids. All growth happens outside of our comfort zone,
Hmm.
and so if we have someone who just wants to be told exactly what to do, they're not a good employee for me. It might work in some organizations, but I'm like you. I need someone to where I can say, "Hey, I need you to get this done," and let them be independent in going figuring out how to get that done. Now, some
Yes.
of the times I might say, "Hey, I want this done, and I want it done this way."
Hmm.
And then it's on me to communicate that. Like, this is one of those decisions where you don't have freedom to choose this. I want you to do this, this, and this, and in this order. And so sometimes we need to do that with them, but a vast majority of the time we get too caught up in that realm instead of, hey, I need you to get this done, and I'm going to push you to grow and do those things.
Yes, totally agree.
So I want to kind of circle back to, growing up, or maybe, early on in your career. Is there any stories that stick out to you, or things that you've learned from others that helped you to grow into your success, financially, and learning that stewardship?
Yeah. So I graduated college in '08, and I went straight into finance, specifically like the Wall Street world. So if anybody recalls, '08, '09 sort of mortgage crisis situation. And here I was right out of college in a pretty, high intensity corporate structure. And I watched overnight, like, people lose everything. And that put a mark on me. Two things. Number one, I was working for a company that had a mortgage subset. So I was on the investment side, and we shared a building, this beautiful building that had just been built, and the mortgage team was just right down the hall. And we came in the morning that, like, everything basically plummeted. And these people had no idea, right? They were finding out real time with the rest of the world who was paying attention that, like, the company they were working for basically was evaporated overnight. And there was all sorts of aftermath that came regarding the leadership of the company. And, that got me thinking, like, wow, number one, these people had no idea. And number two, like, the weight of control that was over these people's lives. I mean, that was like a devastating thing, right? Even though they were indirectly a part of it, it was still huge. And I also saw people frantically panic. I mean, the company I worked for, they were like 53 billion in assets, and overnight it went down 50%. People were just pulling their money out of the market, and we were a portfolio management company. It was chaos. That was definitely a marker for me at that point in my life of, like, this is insane that people even live like this. And, what do you really do? Like, there's got to be more. And so I was young, of course. But yeah, that would definitely be a marker of early impression. Again, just that economy at that time, being in the Wall Street world, it was interesting.
So how did that affect you long term? Like, did it take you a while to get out of that fear mentality after seeing that? Or was it, I'm not going to leave things in others' control? What was kind of the lesson learned from there?
I don't think I had that much depth at that point in my life to it, but definitely I wasn't overly, like, impressed by the narrative, I guess. I ended up pivoting into a different, still in the corporate finance space, but a different sector of business. And I don't know, I don't remember feeling fear about it. I think it was just more of a overnight everything can change. Literally. I mean, we had just had this amazing Christmas party with, like, live music. I mean, you're talking, everything was over the top. And then just a few short months later, this company literally dissolved. I mean, the entire value of the company plummeted overnight. That's wild, especially if, like, you've moved there, you've invested your life in this place. And, and then my husband, he worked for almost 20 years in an industry, a corporate space that we moved a lot. They would relocate us every couple years. And you kind of get to the point eventually where you're like, why do I keep just moving around for other people? Like, it's like you can easily become almost a ploy in someone else's hand. And you reach a point where you're like, there's got to be more. Like, I don't have, like, life doesn't have to look like this just because people say it does, or, this is how this specific company functions. It doesn't necessarily mean that's how your story has to be written. So,
Yeah, that is a really good point of, taking control
yeah,
of what your situation is, of what what you want to have happen, because no one's going to care more about your dreams and your goals and your ambition more than you are. And
yeah,
so if you don't take control and take that initiative, you're going to get pushed wherever it's convenient and going to help somebody else out.
right.
Um, so yeah, that's a great lesson there. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up here? Any great advice you got along the way? Doesn't have to be financially related, but maybe
Yeah.
top advice that you have, or another story about what shaped you for your career and your upbringing.
I think if I really could give advice around, you know, this whole concept of building wealth and taking risks, is like, you're never going to feel ready, right? There's a level of risk you're going to hedge in every decision you make. And I think so many people can get held back in that comfort facade of like, well, I got to build up this whatever strategy plan before I can really do what I want to do. And I think it's a trap most of the time. Like, you're never going to feel 100% ready when you take a step out and try something new, or maybe stretch yourself into a different capacity than you weren't before. And yeah, like, surround yourself with people who are doing that too. And you can kind of like feed off of each other's, journey and faith, and just having like the right support system when you're doing things like that. Because yeah, it can be a wild ride for sure.
Yeah, I just got done finishing the book about Elon Musk, and that's one of the things that is, he did over and over again. He fails faster than anybody else. I mean, and to the largest degree, he's willing to have a rocket ship blow up and spend millions and millions of dollars to figure out what didn't work. And so, it's okay to let it blow up. Probably
Yeah.
not to that scale. He has a lot more resources, but when he first started, he didn't. And he still was, hey, let's go, let's fail fast, let's, figure out what didn't work. So then that way we can pivot and move and get better. And because, yeah, you're right. You're never going to be ready. If you're waiting for
No.
that perfect storm, it's never going to happen.
And I also think, I say this often, like, you can always make more money. Sometimes you can have almost this idolized relationship with money of like, oh, well, if I don't have it or if I spend it, which all of that can be very valid feelings, right? But the reality is you can always get more money. Like, there's always a way to try again, to your point, and kind of restructure, learn from what you did, and creatively figure out, okay, how can we do this a little bit differently? I actually heard someone the other day say, you never fail until you actually quit. Like, it's not failure until you totally throw in the towel and you're like, I'm giving up. But yeah, you persevere, you pivot, and maybe it looks a little bit different the next time, but it's not exactly failure. It's like your perspective on the situation.
Yeah, it's really, you're learning at that point. You're learning from each mistake. If you're doing that, then you're not failing. If you do the same thing over and over again, then you probably are failing, even if you haven't given up. Because you got to pivot and learn new things from it. But yeah, it is failing is learning, because you figured something out about what didn't work. That's why Thomas Edison always talked about, he didn't fail to make the light bulb however many times. It was, he learned 1,000 ways not to make it.
Yeah.
And that attitude made all the difference.
I think one more thing I would say that I've continued to do, but I didn't always understand it at first, was planning for where I want to be, not where I am. So like making, creating order and structure around that, like creating a trust and setting up our assets a certain way, and like doing things not because we're already to that point, but it's like, this is where we're going, and from a wealth perspective, right? Like, this is my goal, so I'm going to start making steps according to where I'm going, not where I am. So it's like you're
Yeah.
thinking strategically ahead.
Yeah, it's big picture planning and vision. Field the dreams. If you build it, they will come. If you build the
Yeah.
structure and start making those steps, it does. It draws things in. And I think that's a great place for us to end there is, make
Yeah.
that plan for where you want to be. And that applies to your kids too, or your legacy of what you want to do. Create it around what you would love to see happen. Make that ideal and then build for it. That's all the time we have today, Rachel, but thank you. Lots of great information in here. Appreciate your perspective and, opening up on the stories about your financial industry. It was definitely an interesting time, I'm sure, to be in there.
Yeah.
But with that, thank you again for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Well, to our listeners, please find Rachel on LinkedIn, follow her page. We'll put a link to her page in the show notes. Yeah, we'll catch you guys next time.